In session 4, we're going to explore processes and strategies and discuss some ways to bring people together so that you build ownership in change organisations. So you'll know that many times what is happening in organisations is that the change is occurring and people aren't brought on board. So these processes that we're going to discuss, some from the art of hosting, some examples from community organisations, have been proven over time to be really successful at bringing people together. Now, we'll have a look at why do change efforts fail generally. So the research done in this area indicates that there are about 75% of change efforts fail in organisations, and mostly they fail because people aren't on board. But there are a lot of assumptions that are incorrect about what's needed to occur to make the change. People also assume that change can be managed and planned and structured, and it's just going to go the way it's expected. That human beings are objective, that there are a set number of steps to a change, that we all have a neutral starting point for change, and that the goal is change. So these are some of the reasons shown up in the research why change efforts have failed over time. We know that for organisational change to be really effective and impactful, then 3 broad conditions need to apply. One of these is information needs to be freely available to all members of the organisation. The other is relationships in the organisation are such that people are going to behave towards one another in respectful and sensitive ways. And also that people have a sense of some control over their lives, that the choices about their futures aren't going to be made without them at all. So that means we need to engage people. If those 3 things are put in place, they're the foundation for successes over time. Some of you might have heard of the work of Meg Wheatley. Leadership and the New Science was her early book, and she's written over many years both in a corporate area and also in communities. She does a lot of work in communities now, and she's found, I suppose, in lots of her conversations with leaders of big organisations, is that they really haven't worked out that their old ways of doing things aren't working. So now she's saying really that when people are lost and they don't know where they're heading, they can't keep relying on the same things that they've also always done. What happens is that if your old ways of doing things don't get you out of a situation, you have to look around and start to engage other people. For any situation where our old maps are failing, we need to call together everyone who would have the information that's needed to create a new map, a new way of going. And this includes people at all levels in an organisation, anyone who plays a role that's relevant. As you in your organisation face really increasingly complex problems that have no easy answers, they have to be responded to with complex interactions. That means looking at the dynamics of everybody involved, bringing all the different groups together, all the different people together, much like we mentioned in the work of Ralph Stacey, that there is no possible way to sort out a complex issue unless you have all the different areas of thinking, values, and groups that are most affected coming together. This really requires people to be participative leaders. And participative leaders, rather than making autocratic decisions from a top-down process, seek to involve everybody. And that means that people find when they're included in the decision-making, when their views, their ideas, their challenges are sought, they are far more involved and there's far more ownership. One of the things that we have found in looking at the leadership research is that leaders are often afraid that they don't know how to solve the problems they face. They look at their old models of command and control, and they put down budgets and strategy and forecasting and incentives and evaluations, but these aren't effective in the changing volatile environments they find themselves in. They find that they struggle to motivate people, and instead they are driven by imperatives, and they start doing this with others, and they start driving with continuous cutbacks and requests to produce more results with fewer resources. In the big companies that are doing this, in the private sector, that many of them are failing, and you would have known that in the global financial crisis that big industries were affected and still are feeling the effects of that. The examples of those businesses that are succeeding, the crucial thing that they have done is engage their people at every level. They've inculcated a strong sense of values, and they've given people latitude to make decisions, design projects, bring in new ideas, and that learning was a key aspect of everything that was done. This approach has been well documented, and it has been resulting in higher productivity, innovation and motivation. And there's been people moving from a fear-based approach to a belief that everyone can contribute and that everybody's ideas are going to be at different stages workable, that if people feel like they're engaged and part of something, even when their ideas aren't taken on, they know that they've had an input, and they also know that there's other times, many times, where their ideas are going to be sought. So it sets quite a different environment for the change. Now, some of the different techniques that are in place to allow people to facilitate engagement and build ownership come from the art of hosting. Now, you'll see that there's a link to this site, so certainly a lot of resources there you can access. The art of hosting is a highly effective way of harnessing collective wisdom and the self-organising capacity of groups of any size. So you can work with smaller groups and larger groups. It's based on the assumption that people give their energy and lend their resources to things that matter most to them. The art of hosting blends powerful conversations, processes to invite people to step in and take charge of the challenges that face them. Now, the art of powerful questions is a key thing if you're going to be hosting, getting people working together. So powerful questions are ones that are really about why and how. But if you start to ask things in your workplace like, are you satisfied with our working relationship? What has been working? Why do you think we've had our ups and downs? So you're starting from a yes, no, and moving much more to a deeper question. So it's a good thing oftentimes when you're in a spot with people where maybe the relationship isn't as strong to ask more less powerful questions, because you're starting tentatively and building rapport with people, and then you can ask the stronger questions of why things have happened, what's important to them. So a key thing in terms of asking questions is that you need to be in a spot with people where you're not just after information, you want to build a relationship with them. They don't see you there as asking them a series of questions, but you're engaging with them, and you are creating an environment with them where they can also ask and they can challenge as well. If you are hosting conversations with people and you are bringing them together, keep in mind that you can model this and bring their awareness to this as well. That as they get together and have conversations, it's important for them to be present, to be fully there, to participate and practice and initiate, to host themselves. And this means they're going to bring forward ideas and initiate and encourage others to do that. And they're going to create with each other a way of coming up with new solutions. So they'll be co-creating. There are a number of different processes and tools that different groups might like to use, but they all have foundations for good conversations, which is around making sure that people have a good question and a good focus. That at times, if you want to, and you want to get everybody involved, you can use a talking piece. You make sure that everybody gets a chance to have a say when you have a talking piece. When you gather information back from people, you are harvesting. This means you're getting feedback. You could create an artifact of the conversations and the outcomes, and people co-create some new directions together. With those harvesting of information, people have enough to make very good, wise decisions about where they need to go. Then they make decisions to act and also stay together. You know that in your own workplace, the more people are together, making decisions, testing things out with each other, challenging different ideas, that means that you have a far better chance of things working. Now, some of you might have been involved in different processes to gather information and to build ownership in change, but there's several different ones that Art of Hosting use. One is around good questions, another is around gathering in circles, World Cafe processes, open space technology, and appreciative inquiry. I have included in the workbook some descriptions of these that you can use, and also there's a very good activity that has both a history trip and appreciative inquiry process combined that you could use. Very useful in times of change for people to look back at where they've been, appreciate that, and then look at what they're going to take to the future. So it's fully described so you could run a process yourselves. A number of years ago, I had the opportunity and privilege to work with a community of leaders from Lockhart River in North Queensland in the Cape. Now, Lockhart River is about 12 hours drive north of Cairns, and it has anywhere between 600 to 800 people in this Indigenous community at any one time. For about half the year, they're cut off from the rest of the state because of floods, and the community leaders there have been partnering with some very dedicated and passionate leaders from outside the community for the last 10 years and working closely with them to co-create where they're going. And this has been an emergent process over time, and about 5 years ago the Puya Foundation was formed, and it has a board of Indigenous community leaders and non-Indigenous leaders from outside the communities who are working together on behalf of the community. They get together and have learning circles on a regular basis, probably about 3 a year, bringing people together from across the state and sometimes from interstate to participate in those conversations. And as suggested in the Art of Hosting, they will start with a good question. So one of their good questions that they were focused on about 18 months ago when I was working with them was, how do we bring parents and our children together, and this is in the early childhood area, to increase our learning and our opportunities for our young people? What do we need to do to make that happen? How do we build ownership of the parents in the education of their children, which is happening in a lot of different ways. It's also around integrating the cultural aspects of daily living with an education system that is not their education system. So bringing those two worlds together. And one of their community leaders talks about inside out and outside in, and she says, we work inside out, so you learn from us, and we show you what to do, and then we have outside in, so we learn from you, so we work together. This has been an approach that has been highly successful for a number of years, but it is successful because what happens is that as people start working together in their learning circles, they get more interested, they have more conversations, more opportunities emerge in their discussions. so that I was running a planning session with these people, and we were doing learning circles and a number of future direction pieces of work. And there was a woman who came in for only a couple of hours into the learning circle, and at the very end, when she spoke about her experience, she said, I attend meetings all of the time across the state, and this is the first one where I have felt inspired to do new things. And I've only been here 2 hours. So it was a lovely, I suppose, recognition of the work of the people in the room. And they were all going, oh wow, you're like, what did we do? what was happening? And it was because the level of engagement, the level of respect, the level of ownership, and the level of contribution and participation was high throughout the whole time. So these are groups of people where some have been meeting together for a number of years, but others haven't been. But each time new people come in, they are welcomed, they're part of it, their contributions are respected, and their ideas are sought. And when the documents are produced and the wise decisions are made where to go next, there are everybody's ideas included, and the new ways of working and the new direction and the new ideas and the new possibilities reflect the different ideas of different people. So if you're very interested in that community and what that foundation has been doing over a number of years and their learning circles, then I've put the website there for you. I think it's probably something where people who are leaders in their own community, who have experienced many challenges in their lives, are taking up the opportunity to lead and learn with others and see that they can be equal participants and leaders in that work. So I encourage you to have a look at that work and some of the papers that have been written around there. We gathered the information following the last learning circle, and some of the feedback from participants include things like, these are an absolute model for best practice in community development and capacity building. Having learning circles keeps us accountable for our actions and for working together to get results. With the constant encouragement and support, better things happen every time. Thanks to the Puya Foundation and all who participate. We can see a real collaborative action happening and a sharing of information as a result of our learning circles. Thank you to our school, the council, Childcare Queensland, Puya Foundation. It takes a community to raise a child, and the learning circles are helping us do this. We can really see the changes happening, and kids tell me what's going on and share their ideas that I bring along to our learning circles. At the end, I feel empowered. It's a good place to yarn and work together. Our actions and our progress are really happening. It's not just a talk fest. One of the things I'm really getting easier with is talking to all of the players that we have here. Now you'll see from the last slide there a quote from Margaret Wheatley, that people only support what they create themselves and only act responsibly for things they care about. There is no greater power than a community discovering what it cares about. One of the things that you could do is really start to work out in your organisation, what are the things that you and others care about? What are the things that you can influence and change? There will be some new direction changes, new strategy changes, resources less, a number of things that are happening that will be challenges and are challenges right now. But when people get to really work on what is it they care about, then it shifts how they start to work together, because it means that you are using some really good ways of connecting to what's important to you and to others, and you can find that is the foundation for transformative change and really effective leadership. Have a look at the workbook, use the activities there, take it into your workplace and discuss it. Go well.